Dr. Ralph Basui Watkins is the Peachtree Professor of Evangelism and Church Growth at Columbia Theological Seminary in Decatur, Georgia. And I want to read for you something he says on his website about himself, and then I will give it up. In an answer to what is it I do, he says, I create shared experiences with students that are innovative, revolutionary, and transformative towards working for justice in the world with communities with which they connect. I think we experienced some of that last night. 2, I work with artists, creative students to help them find their creative agency so that they can create work that amplifies the voices and presence of marginalized communities. I think we experienced that as well. And 3, I create bodies of work at the intersection of spirituality, photography, documentary film, and social justice that amplify the voices and stories of marginalized communities, and we will experience that today. That I told him last night, I felt deeply, now these are my holiness roots. I felt deeply convicted as a creative, as poetry and does one woman been create. I was like, oh my God, oh my God. So I went home and repented and have not yet written a poem, but I hope to do that before the end of the week. Dr. Watkins.
Give Dr. Valerie Bridgman a hand. Come on, y'all. Show us some love. I appreciate her dearly, and I want to thank her again publicly for the invitation and for the grace and hospitality I've been shown since being here. It's been great. I want to thank you all for coming back this morning. So what I want to focus in today is this issue of art-based research, or what it means to be an art-based research and transmedia scholarship. Richard, click there. There we go. So, start with the story. I was reading Ellen Lewin's book, Filled with the Spirit, Sexuality, Gender, Radical Inclusivity, and the Black Pentecostal Church Coalition. It's a book that chronicles the story of the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries that's led by the presiding prelate, Bishop Yvette Flunder. And as I was reading that book, there's a story in the book where she's talking about Bishop Flunder greeting people. If you ever met Bishop Flunder, it's like meeting an angel, right? When Bishop Flunder kisses you and says that she loves you, it just goes through your very body. I mean, you actually feel the love of God in her presence, right? And so I'm reading this in this book, but I can't see Bishop Flunder. I can't hear her and can't feel her. And then I thought about those who are going to come behind us. They need to see and hear Bishop Flunder and those that's moving. Because I believe we're at an historical moment in life of our church, right? And those come behind us are going to study this period. So we have to create work that's archived that we can see. And so it moved me to do the work that I'm going to talk about today, that work of being an art-based researcher and what it means to be a transmedia scholar. So, as Dean Richmond said, I'm an art-based researcher who does work at the intersection of photography, documentary film, spirituality, and social justice. I co-create with marginalized communities. That's critical. I co-create. I'm not creating the work. I'm co-creating the work. I see those I work with as co-creators, right? We're doing this work. I'm not doing the work about you. I'm doing the work with you, right? But I also want to share with you that art-based research is not something that I thought of. There's actually scholarship to support art-based research. And I'm hoping today to give you the toolbox of my work so maybe you can replicate the work, right? I think there are other ways of being a scholar. And I'm in no way demeaning the ways we have been scholars, but I think there are different ways to be a scholar. And I think being an art-based researcher is one of those ways. And so Patricia Levy, she's really kind of the mother of this scholarship. And so her works are kind of the foundational works, and then those of Elwin Eisner and Sean McNiff. So art-based researcher and transmedia scholar. Transmedia, in that I work with photography, documentary film, and writing. So in 2023, I was getting ready to go on sabbatical, coming out of the pandemic, and was asking God, what is it God would have me to do to use that time, the gift of a year to do work? What a gift as a scholar, right? You have a year to create something free of committee meetings. Praise be to God. I mean, you know, I don't mind teaching, but I don't love grading. Free of grading papers. Praise be to God. Free of faculty meetings. Thank you, Jesus. Hello? No offense, Dean Bridgman. All right. And so I started this work called Seeing the Future of African Church and Rainbow, a year in the life of Real Inspirational Ministries, which is an inclusive church in Atlanta, Georgia. Because I realized this is stories that we had not seen, and stories that had not been told, and a story that I did not know, right, that I did not know. And so I spent a year doing the work. The work premiered April 2023, and so I'll kind of go through the foundation of that work. So talk about my process. First, my process is I feel I need to be called to a story, right, that I feel God calls me to tell a story. Secondly, I think that after that call, it's about intentionality of building relationships with those we're going to tell that story with. Third, it's about listening. Listening, right? Listening to learn, to grow. Fourth, an invitation to co-create. Does that community want me there? Right? I'm not inviting myself. Have they invited me? It's like when somebody knocks on come to your house and knock on the door. Huh? If you uninvited, you unadmitted. You know what I'm saying? If you come knock on the door, I just in the neighborhood where you're not getting in my house, right? So it's about being invited, right? And then to me, the way my process works, I have to read deeply to free my creativity, right? It starts in my heart, then moves to my head, then moves to my hands. That makes sense to you? This is my process, right? And then viewing, I have to see things that begin to inspire my creativity, and then I begin to shoot. And I don't create a body of work at the end. I create work while I'm doing the work. Does that make sense to you? So I don't wait until I have the whole thing produced and I put the documentary out there. I'm producing short reels, I'm producing images, and I'm sharing them in real time and getting feedback, seeing what the work is doing, right? So that's kind of my process. And then another part for me that really helps me is going to see work that inspires my work. Does that make sense to you? Right? Like I have a standing Friday appointment to go to something that's going to be a creative experience, primarily museums or openings, something that moves me. Because I think when you see other work, it opens you up to see your work differently. Does that make sense to you, right? So I go in space where creativity lives, so the creativity in me can be inspired. So this particular project, Seeing the Future of the African American Church of the Rainbow, a life in Real Inspirational Ministries. Did 21 interviews. I shot 21 interviews, covered 14 events at Real Inspiration Ministries, worship and special events, 7 off-campus events, 14 portrait shootings, and covered 5 cities. A little bit about these interviews. So this is how I did the interview. So part of this work was, I was really trying, so I'm a cisgender, heterosexual, African-American male who's benefited greatly from that privilege in the Black church. So my work is speaking to people like me, right, who don't know this story. And so the way I shot the interviews was very intentional. 2 cameras set up, but I shot them in an empty church because I wanted folk to feel what some of my LGBTQ siblings told me church feels like for them, right? For example, Gerald and his husband, Raymond, can't walk in the church like me and Vanessa. Me and Vanessa walk in the church holding hands. No one looks at us or gawks at us. Me and Vanessa can sit in the church and put our arms around each other. No one says anything. But Gerald can't do that, right? One of the greatest singers of all time. Couldn't do that, right? So I wanted the interviews to, in many ways, and the images in the same context, kind of give a sense of what it feels like that I couldn't feel, but I was trying to show and make folk like me feel. Does that make sense to you? Y'all still with me? Here we go. So this work is really rooted in the call of the ancestors to me, right? And I talked with them some yesterday, talked with them again today. The truth and her use of images, Frederick Douglass, and then I'll talk more today about Debbie B. Du Bois, who is really my kind of sociological father, because my PhD is actually in sociology. So historical foundation. It comes to Frederick Douglass, her truth, who really understood images, and then of course Du Bois, who does something phenomenally with images. And when Du Bois was the editor of the Crisis magazine, he always used images in his work. Douglass, 1861, lecture on pictures. It lies directly in the path of what I conceive to be a key great mystery of life and progress. The process by which a man is able to invent his own subjective consciousness into objective form, considered in all its range and its truth, highest attribute of man's nature. What he was arguing is that if I can produce an image of myself I can literally free myself, right? Because I can see myself. Because in many ways, like right now, you can't see you, but I can see you, and I can't see me. But the image allows you to see you, right? And so he argued there was something powerful, and he argued that was the key to progress. Sojourner Truth. Truth was making a vital argument out of exceedingly humble and fragile artifacts. She used these images. She was turning the paper into value, always fighting poverty. Truth made herself worth money. None of this comes as a surprise. The socially marginal turned into value by art is a very old story indeed. So she begins to sell these images, and she says, I sell the shadow to support the substance. So my work is linked to Sojourner Truth. And then Du Bois, right? Because Bois is the first researcher, I argue the first visual researcher. The first visual researcher, right? I'm going to write that book next. The first visual researcher, right? In 1899, he was the first one to do a statistically based social science work. Matter of fact, there's one book called The Forgotten Scholar that argues Du Bois is the father of sociology, which is a very, very powerful argument, right? Anyway, so what Du Bois begins to do is, as Du Bois begins to do his research, he's trying to graphically display his research, right? So he's showing you the first time ever happened in sociological history. He's actually giving you a map of the seven wards. Never happened before, right? This is Du Bois, 1899, on his way to Clark Atlanta University to become a professor. 1899. Listen to what Du Bois says. In 1900 came a significant occurrence which not until lately have I set in its proper place in my life. I had been for 9 years studying the Negro problem, and the results have been significant. But then he says, I wanted to set down its aims and method in some outstanding way, which would bring my work to a noticeable thinking world. Du Bois was really trying to argue, I don't want my work to just be for scholars. Too much of scholarship is for scholars and does not reach the world, and so that which we write and talk about, folk never get. Matter of fact, some books I read, I know smart as I am, I don't know what they're saying. Y'all ever been there? Have you had to read a book and read the paragraph 3 and 4 times and you still don't know what the hell it means? And you know you're not dumb. It's just the way we're taught to write. It don't make sense. Hello, somebody, huh? I go to AAR meetings and sit in rooms and say, oh my God, what are they talking about? I mean, I know I'm smart. I got all kinds of degrees, but this don't make no sense. You with me? Du Bois wanted his research and data to make sense. He wanted the thinking world to access his research. Here we go. So what does Du Bois do? Du Bois says, here comes the Great World Fair in Paris in 1900. He says it's a great opportunity here. The Great World Fair at Paris was being planned, and I thought I might put my findings into plans, charts, and figures so what? One might see. Here we go. What we were trying to accomplish. I got a couple of my best students and put a series of sets of facts into charts. We made the most interesting set of drawings. We limed on pasteboard cards about a yard square and mounted on a number of movable standards. The details of the finishing of these 50 more charts in colors with accuracy was terribly difficult with little money, limited time, and not much encouragement. So he goes to the Paris Fair, and this is the booth that he had, right? All these images of black folks showing our progress. This is a bust of Frederick Douglass, so he's paying homage to Frederick Douglass, the first one who talked about imagery in 1861, photography in 1839, so he's paying homage there. This is the way he takes all of these images and his research for the world to see in the Paris Fair in 1900. And then in this book, Black Lives, 1900, it shows you all the ways he began to draw data charts to show his data so that the world could see. So he's the first scholar to really move into that realm. Not only that, Booker T. Washington, in 1909, 50 years after the end of slavery, Booker T. Washington commissioned his first documentary projecting new images of free and self-determining African Americans working class on the community screens across the nation. So we have Du Bois still images. Y'all still with me? 1900. We got 1909, which is documented in the Documentary Resistance book, that Booker T. Washington is doing documentaries. Why are they doing this? Why do you think they're doing this? Why do you think they're doing this? Real question.
That's what people are looking at. They're going to the movie.
So they're beginning to see, look, what do you think they're trying to show? What do you think they're trying to show? I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm human, the progress. They're making an argument about the humanity of African Americans. They're showing how far we've come since 1865. You remember the sermon yesterday? I gave you some history yesterday, 1865. They're showing folk how far we've come. But I got to show you, because I have to actually contradict the negative images that are put out there about us. Y'all see what I'm talking about? I'm back to yesterday, right? If we don't contradict those images, they become truth because we've not challenged the lie. If you don't tell the truth, the lie becomes the truth, and it's hard to dislodge a lie when folk have believed it. Y'all still with me? Right? So folk are looking, folk are seeing, this thing of photography is taking A. Now we got to show that we're human. Right? Here we go. So Booker T. Washington commissions a documentary in 1909. Let's keep going. So for my work, I'm not just whistling in the sky and saying this is what we should do. There are also deep theological references to the work. Let me give you some of those that fuel this body of work. And Richard is going to make the PowerPoints available, so you don't have to write all this down, so you can get some of this stuff. So the first book that has moved me in profound ways is Pamela Lightsey's work, Our Lives Matter, A Woman's Queer Theology, right? Yeah, it really moved me, right? I mean, I'm well trained in black theology, women's theology, but this book really is my foundational ground. Darnell Moore's work, very powerful work. A Princeton grad, tells his story. Then, of course, Bishop Flunder's work, Where the Edge Gathers. I mean, a powerful theological work. Because Bishop Flunder helped me understand that God is in the margins, right? We're trying to change the center, but God doesn't change the center. Jesus didn't come to create a reformed Judaism. He created something on the margins, right? So he helped me understand a theology from the margins is where God is and is where I should be and actually want to be. Because I was trying to change the center, but I believe God is actually moving the center. It's actually the margins. That's the new center. So celebrate where we are. Y'all with me? But it was this book that theologically freed me from trying to save the sinner that's committed to dying and not being the church that God's calling us to be. Y'all with me? But if I don't have that theological grounding, I can't create this work. You with me? This work cannot be created in an artistic vacuum. It must be rooted in a deep theological grounding so that I can understand how God's moving in the work and moving in me as I create the work. Does that make sense to you? Yes. Here we go. Whew. All right. Horace Griffin's book, classic text. Lives in Atlanta, great friend. So I'm going to tell you something about Horace Griffin. So I'm starting to do this work, and I'm saying, should a cisgender heterosexual male be doing this work? I can't do this. And I go talk to Horace, and Horace says, you have to do it, and I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm going to be your accountability partner, right? But this book was turbulent. Then Janet Mock's book, right? Powerful book. And then this book, George Johnson's book, Frat Brother, hit me in profound ways, because the book I write is really in conversation with this book, All Boys Aren't Blue. What he argues is, and specifically in African-American culture, we celebrate this toxic masculinity by being a blue boy, being a tough boy, being an athlete, that kind of thing, which is the kind of boy that I was. And what he argues is all boys aren't blue. And what I write in my book is that I didn't know he existed in my community. And if he did, I didn't love him the way he should have been loved, because I celebrated in a black town. I'm now writing against what I participated in and trying to call us to accountability. But it's this book that freed me theologically, ideologically, and sociologically. And it's now on the banned book list. So please, if you don't have it, buy it, read it, share it, give it, support that work, right? Here we go. So that's that theological foundation of the work. And then for me, so I talk about the theological foundation, then also the movie-making influences. And it starts with Spike. It starts with Spike because what Spike did was Spike wrote a book about how he made every movie that he made. To take the mystery out of movie making. Because really what I'm really arguing is that you really can make a movie with this. This is all you need to make a movie, right? It's all you need to make a movie, right? But what Spike does, Spike takes the mystery out of the process. So he was critical to me. And then there were three critical documentaries, Harlan County, Spike Lee, When the Levees Break, and then Unrest. Those documentaries kind of give form to the work that you'll see in my work. And then Black Art, The Absence of Light. Probably the most foundational documentary for me was this, The New Black, family, faith, and the fight for equality. This is the story about the fight for marriage equality in Maryland, right? Specifically how the black church sided with conservatives, going against our own siblings, right? Because people ask me many times, how did you get here? If you're a black theologian, how can you not support your LGBTQ siblings? If God's on the side of the oppressed, so God stopped being on the side of the oppressed because our siblings are were made and created LGBTQ? That's inconsistent theologically for me, right? You with me? And so this movie exposes that. And then Gordon Parks, who argues in that documentary, Gordon Parks, great photographer, documentarian, movie maker, argues that what we do is our cameras are our choice of weapons. What Gordon Parks' works argues is that when we create beautiful work, people can't turn away. Because when you see something that's beautiful and aesthetically pleasing, it draws you in. And if I can make you look, I can change your mind. Because many times it's that we have not seen what is right before our eyes. That makes sense to you? So that was powerful for me. So portraiture influences go back to a few people that influence. Roy DeCarava and Langston Hughes, Sweet Fly Paper of Life, where you put image and words together. Dalwood Bay's work, and then Carrie Mae Weems, who I think is my probably favorite photographer of all time. She does a great work called Kitchen Table. And then other influence of my portraiture is Deborah Willis is the greatest of all historians of Black African-American photography. So her work is kind of an historical foundation for my work, and these three books are just classic texts. I'm just trying to let you see how this work is not. I'm just not whistling Dixie. You see what I'm saying to you, right? That is deeply rooted in scholarship, and I'm offering you this to think about how you might also do this work possibly. So some of the images from my work. This is Keisha Ballard. Keisha's a deacon in the church Real Inspiration Ministries. For this body of work, I did 14 portraits. She's one of the portraits I did. I did some portraits in more traditional sanctuaries. This is a more contemporary sanctuary. So you see, once again, catching her eyes. I'm using gel light to put a yellow light on the right side of her face. But the key thing, what I'm trying to do with the images is make you see her, right? And what it possibly feels like come to a sanctuary and not be able to show up as your full, authentic self. My favorite image is Keisha Ballard, silhouette, same person you just saw. Just love that image, right? And I think to me it kind of symbolizes the future of the church that she's looking looking to. Bishop Yvette Flunder. This book is all over the world. I'm telling you something about this image right here. So I fly to Oakland to be with Bishop Flunder. And so we have an interview set for Saturday. I'm going to shoot the church on Sunday. So I fly in Saturday. Bishop comes. We're supposed to have an hour interview and an hour images, right? I have all my questions set up. That's not how Bishop Flunder rolls, right? So she sits down and she schools me. She educates me for about 2 hours, right? Then I got 15 minutes to get this image. And we got this image. And it just was great. And now she uses it all the time, and I'm so thankful. But I think it captures it really is, right? But I got it in 15 minutes, which is so cool. And Bishop Flynn has been so gracious to me. I had given up on the church until this project. All my career has been trying to say to the church, we're missing it, no one's listening. And Bishop Flunder loved me, and the fellowship loved me, and it actually transformed me. And it really revived my faith. That's the portraiture. Sonia Williams, this is my pastor. So Dr. Bridgman didn't tell this story. So how I meet my pastor, when we did I had a TV show I had a TV show in Atlanta, and Dean Bridgman was on the show, and I was getting ready to shoot my first documentary. The TV station had given me a budget, I was going to be producer, director. I had never done this in my life. And I was doing a documentary series called She's the Pastor. And I wanted to have a pastor of an inclusive church. And so Dean Bridgman said, have you heard about RIM? I said, no. And she connected me with then Reverend Sonia Williams. And this image, Bishop-elect, now Bishop Sonia Williams, connected me with Bishop Williams, who became my pastor and has been gracious to me. My son died April 2023. And she did my son's funeral. Right, and so just a great gift of God, and now that's my church, that's my church home. So thank you. And so this is the image. That image has won awards, been in different shows of Bishop Sonia Williams, and this is Reverend Gerald Campbell, another award-winning image. So when my son died, he sung at my son's funeral. He was the key voice at my son's funeral. So they have blessed me in so many ways. Once again, the image that you see is an award-winning image. Been in several exhibitions. Once again, I'm using a gel light to give a yellow sunshine, like the sun is shining on them from the right. Once again, giving some depth to the image, trying to show the issue of this empty sanctuary, right? And what it means to be in those spaces as an LGBTQ person in the life of the church. Reverend Nadine Rawls, another good friend, great preacher, great singer, great colleague, brilliant sister. She's featured very prominently in the documentary, has a powerful story in the documentary. When you watch it, you'll hear her story. Once again, similar setup, right? Her front and center, little ruined image to read. Yellow light from the left trying to show the sun coming in, and the sun, S-O-N or S-U-N, actually shining on them. So the documentary work. This is actually Devlin Reedus. He's the only trans brother who's featured in the documentary. Great colleague, great brother, great man of God. So we had a great time with him. Anyway, so a few texts kind of inform me. And so what I'm trying to argue is that there's something that documentaries do that books don't do. Y'all with me? So let's talk about that and where I come and why I went there and why I go there, why I spent so much time doing this work. So in documentary resistance, the author argues, effective documentary must leave a footprint in the sphere of politics, in the hearts of its audience, opening up spaces for social change. Listen what the author story movement says. Failing to question or counter dominant cultural narratives perpetuates injustice by ignoring voices that have traditionally not enjoyed as much or any access to shaping or transmitting stories or their lived realities to audiences. In this way, counter-narratives and documentary storytelling are crucial to democratic practice. By expanding collective understanding, not only at one point and within one story, but building and accumulating over time, incrementally shifting grand societal narratives about people and their lived realities and histories. You see what I'm trying to do, right? Yeah. Because what I found in doing this work, I thought I knew Bishop Sonia Williams and Gerald Campbell and Nadine. I thought I knew these folk. I didn't know them. So when we did the interviews, I did the interviews one-on-one with them. I would sit down, they would sit here, and I cried in every interview. I sat there and cried in every interview because I had not sat for an hour and a half and just listened to their story. I was ignorant of my ignorance. You with me? I didn't realize what I didn't know. And I sat there and I would cut the camera on. I was trying to be a good documentarian, a good scholar. And I would go through these questions. I just would sit there and just cry. I had never felt the pain and the hurt that I was party to. You know what I mean? I was part of that pain. I had done harm. And I was both convicted and transformed in those moments. And I realized that if I didn't know these stories, my God, who else don't know these stories? And you have narratives about my LGBTQ siblings, but we've never heard the story. And so what I'm hoping to do with this work is to counter those dominant cultural narratives with these stories. Making sense to you? A useful film gets us thinking. And without thinking, there's no moral imagination. Thinking isn't about mastery, control, or rationalization. Thinking is a way of being, and that's what useful films try to achieve. An expanded way of being in the world, in dialogue with the world. That's Jill Godmo's quote from the book, Kill the Documentary. She goes on to say, we look at things all the time, but often fail to really see them. This is great. So I'll tell you about this picture, right? This is one of my trans siblings. This is Gerald, who I talked about earlier. So it's actually Pastor Sonia's birthday celebration, and they're just having good church together. You know what I mean? Because I really love documentary photography as well, right? But this is a great moment. I mean, it's just a great moment. And they're like kind of challenging others singing, right? Some of that's on the documentary too, and I'll give you the link to the documentary before we're over, right? But here we go, right? So we're really trying to get folks to understand anew. That's the work we're trying to do with the documentary work. Basically, that's our job as filmmakers, to intervene in the hegemonic culture, to move our audiences out of the habit of hegemonic thinking, ultimately to spark our moral imagination. Remember I started yesterday, I said, we're in an imagination battle, right? So we have to create images that expand. So this is Bishop Sonia Williams, with her granddaughter on her lap. Dakota's a mess, man. Dakota thinks she's my boss. Dr. Ralph, you need Dr. Ralph to get a picture of me. I said, okay, I got you, baby. So look what the book Kill the Documentary says. To make useful films about others, I recommend that you collaborate fully with your participants as social actors. Make them your filmmaking partners. Make every decision and solve every problem together. Usually your partners know more about the situation issues than you do. Make a film with them, not about. That was my goal. That at the end of the work, can folks, this is our film, not Ralph's film, right? Right? That was my ultimate goal, right? That they could see themselves. And so what I did in the work, they're constantly seeing the work, signing off on the work, critiquing the work, and pushing me throughout the work, right? Right? Here we go. Invent adequate techniques to represent their aesthetics and yours. Your filmmaking will be transformed, and so will you. So what happened in this experience, y'all, I've got transformed. I found God in this work. You with me? Which was, you know, I'm a preacher. I'm the chair of the Evangelism Church. I've always been about, you know, getting folk to Christ, and something happened to me. I actually found God in the work. And that's not what I came to do, right? I was just being a good little sabbatical scholar, and it literally transformed my faith. I actually rediscovered God in God's church. Blew my spiritual mind. I'm like, oh my God, I wasn't coming for all this, but look at what God has done, right? And this is Katina, who's beautiful. This is Keisha Ballard. Keisha Ballard and Katina, they're married. They're a couple. So that's Katina, who's great. She's a super great singer. Beautiful sister. Beautiful. Oh my God. So the movie showed at AAR, so we're doing that scholarly thing to show we are doing that too. This is the premiere. Image from the premiere was packed. And I love this because Bishop Sonia is right here with her wife Regina, and she's crying. Because there's a clip in the film where she talks about what she misses in the church. And when you watch the doc, you'll see that. But the room was packed. It was a great. And this is being shown April 17th, and my son died April 11th. And so this community just came in this space and loved me through the roughest time of my life. So if that wasn't God, right? Because I thought I couldn't get through that. But through those relationships of me falling in love with them and them falling in love with me, I believe God knew that I would need them at the end. And I never felt more loved in the love of God than I did on this night right here. Toughest night of my life, but the greatest night of my life, right? Because God was so present in that place. So this is a wonderful night. And so many of the folk there are in the dock, and we'll show you that. I love this image. So I showed you Katina earlier, right? So this is Katina, and this is Keisha. They're married, and that's Keisha looking at her images. Do y'all see that? Right? And that's what I'm saying happens, right? That something happens. And so I love this of them reflecting, and you can see Katina just smiling, looking at her lady. You see what I'm saying to you, right? And what images actually do. So it's liberating them, it liberates me. And then those who have the opportunity to come and see these images, it's now traveling in various places where the exhibition is being shown, primarily in churches. And that's the goal. The goal of this work is for it to be free online. The second goal of this work is to get the work in churches. We can have conversations around the work, right? Specifically, those who are really having these difficult conversations, how do we facilitate that? Make sense to you? So that's a beautiful image to me. So the work continues. So I'm going to show you a short clip from the documentary where Bishop Flunder talks. This is my work.
Our duty is to do no harm. And if what it is that happens in our churches, in our personal lives, in our walk with God, in our walk in society, in humanity, if that is not our first face duty, I will not harm you. If that is not first, any kind of evil is possible. From the pulpit and from the pew, any kind of evil. That is TFAM. Our effort, our desire is to learn the godliness of doing no harm.
I use a lot of drone work in my work to kind of show God coming down, but then coming very real in those spaces, right? So book comes out fall 2025-26. Working title is Black Intimacy in the Black Church, a Black Preacher's Journey to an Inclusive Love, where I tell my story. It's a book of repentance and lament and grieving about my complicity, but also calling the church and kind of like folks say, how did you get here as a Black Baptist preacher? And I'm trying to tell folks how I got there. Sister and say, how did you get here? So that's the story that I'm trying to tell in the book. And by the grace of God, it's coming through Justin Press. Story about this book. So I go on sabbatical, write the book. It's my 7th book. Never had issue with a publisher in my life. But write a book, get a publisher right away, done deal. First book, I couldn't find a publisher. Broke my heart, right? Every publisher had a reason not to publish the book. And I really wanted Justin to publish the book because Justin is the publisher that really reaches out to Black churches. And that's the audience for the work, primarily. So I give the book to Judson. 2 years, nothing. And then I was at a Fellowship of Affirming Ministry regional conference, and one of the preachers said to me, Dr. Watkins, the Lord told me you got a book you wrote. And the woman didn't know this now. God told me you got a book you wrote. And God told me that publisher going to publish that book. I want to say, ma'am, do you know that no one has published this book? And I know it was I thought it was my best written book, right? I said, okay, thank you for that. Right. I go to D.C. to take some pictures on an assignment. And I go to the gym workout, coming from the gym, and Justin emails me. Knock, we've wrestled with the book for 2 years. If it's still available, we want to publish your book. Wow. A week after that woman told me that. You with me, right? So I really think this work goes along with the documentary and with the photos. So that work continues. That book comes out. We want to travel with the book, travel with colleagues, siblings who are in the documentary, show the doc, have the images, have those conversations. That's the goal for the future of the work. As I told you, the images of Bishop Sonia Williams and Gerald have been in several exhibitions. The most recent exhibition was the mayor of Atlanta has a pride exhibition every year, and their images were featured in that exhibition. We were thankful and happy for that. And so that's seeing the future of the African Church in the Rainbow, a year in the life of Real Inspiration Ministries, and the work continues. So this QR code gets you to the documentary. If you want to get a picture of that or hit on your phone, takes you right to the YouTube channel and gets you right to the doc. You also can follow me on Instagram. I'm always posting Instagram, but that'll take you right to the full-length documentary that you can watch it. And I ask that you share it. I can hear the intro. I can hear it. I know that. I say intro right here. So share it. Our goal is to get it out, right? It's free. We ain't trying to make no money. It's free. Share it. And I'll bring that slide up at the end too as well. I can hear it. I can hear it on your phone. I heard it. Y'all got it? You got it? I hear it. That's the opening. I can hear it. No, it's good. I like hearing that. I know that opening, I like hearing that, right? So watch it, share it, right? Watch it, share it. So this is what I'm working on now, Portraits of Faith. I'm going on sabbatical January 2026, but I've started working already. So Portraits of Faith series is a body of work where LGBTQ siblings, people of faith, are featured with a color of the rainbow flag behind them. So I talked this a little bit last night answering Dr. Steve Bridgman's question. Yeah, Bishop, I'm prophesying. Bishop! So this is this work. Okay, all right. Remember what you said. You weren't going to be here. Remember, okay. God, you heard her. You heard her, God. Yeah. So this is Reiko and Wanda. They're married. They come in to do these images. So you pick your color of the rainbow flag you want behind you, and then we take the image, right? It's going to be a series of portraits. Our goal is to have 200 portraits. Can you see this? 200 beautiful portraits and a wonderful exhibit. So Reiko and Wanda come in, and we start talking, having a good time. And I said, we ought to do some images of you all as a couple. And they say, okay. And then this happens. What I realized is we need beautiful images of queer love. Yes. Beautiful images, right? Yes. And so we do this, right? Isn't that a beautiful image? Just statuesque, right? I mean, just I mean, and we're listening to whatever, listening to maybe Nita Baker, having a good time in my studio, right? So we talked about this last night. That's where creativity opened me up. I didn't plan this. We start talking about this, so then another series comes now called The Look of Love. Great song, right? The look of love is in your eye. Right, so now I'm going to show you what love looks like. Look at this one. That tender, precious embrace of love that we don't normally see. I'm changing the narrative, right? And you got to look at that. You cannot say that is not beautiful. Precious. You can feel the love, right? You can feel it, right? So that's my goal with this work, right? And that came out of just couples started coming in and say, let's do this too. And it just started happening, right? So now I have like 15 of them. I plan to do 200 or more over the next year or so, right? And then what happens to these are my friends, people we're hanging out with. Rayco's a pastor, church that we go out and hang out with. They love him, we love him back. So that's also in this image, these images too, is about our love for each other. But I think the images are about how we're relating and our loving relationship. Make sense to you? So you know what? Did she really? Oh my gosh, that is my girl. No. Well, this couple, so this Sean Jones and Tawana, they just recently got married, right? So they come into the studio and, we had a great time, right? Another great time. We jamming, dancing, and then this happened, right? And I have tons of images of them because Twana's spirit, right? Right. So we was it was a night shoot. We just having a great time. We just jamming. Click. So this is how this work is started, right? And so I'm gonna have these images along with the other images in that exhibition. You with me? Right? Precious, beautiful images, right? Beautiful light. So the work continues. Let me go back because I want to introduce this before I show it to you. So now what I'm doing is doing little what I'm calling historical moments. And so this is the moment I'm going to show you where Bishop Flunder, Bishop Vanessa, and Bishop Troy Sanders are inducted into the Morehouse College of Laity and Ministers. You were inducted what year? 2010? 2012.
Yeah.
Yes. 10, so 10, so 10. Only the esteemed great leaders are in this induction, right? And so this is when Bishop Flunder, Bishop Vanessa, and Bishop Troy Sanders are being inducted. I'm doing these little stories because I'm trying to leave these trails and breadcrumbs for those who come behind us to see how God developed God's church in this age. Here we go. Watch this piece.
Significant day because first we are being inducted with our beloved presiding bishop, myself and Bishop Troy, but for all of the social change, the justice work that's being done in the earth, the work that Morehouse has done and is continuing to do, and we are grateful for the opportunity to be considered and honored.
What is significant about this day is that it honors the ministry of many of us who are for a long time on the margins, doing the work that needed to be done, but it was not appreciated, was not honored. Work for women, the LGBT community, for people who are involved and engaged in justice work. This day makes all of those things simultaneously holy.
I don't think words can articulate how I'm feeling. I'm so proud, and I'm very proud because he's been outstanding all his life, so I am very proud. It was predicted years ago, before he was born, that he would be the first child that came out of his mother's womb would be a prophet.
And to partake in this opportunity with other open and affirming leaders is revolutionary. I'm so excited about it.
That's the work, y'all. That's it. I'm done. Questions?
If you have a question, you have to use the mic. Don't say, I can talk loud. You have to use the mic. Questions? Thank Dr. Watkins again for this work. Amazing work. All right, any questions?
Comments? Thoughts? Reactions? Got you, one back
Say what?
here.
Okay, I'm just thinking about how you were talking about when you take a picture, it can also change you.
Yes,
I'd like to hear more about that.
yes. So my work is deeply, so you can see I'm kind of emotional. My work is deeply relational. Frederick Douglass argued that only a black person can take a black person's picture. What he really was suggesting was there has to be some relational aspect of it, right? I think that God is love. And because God is love, I think creativity comes from a space of love. And I think you do your best work with those that you're in love with. So no one sits in front of my camera. It's we're in a loving relationship, co-creating together. And at every setting, something happens. Right? It's like those images of the couples, right? It was just that moment of me loving them and saying, why don't we do this, right? And something happened. But I had to be changed to see that. I had to see them as a loving couple, not as subjects for my other project, right? So I'm open to that. I'm always open to that. But I think that if your work comes from a place of love, I think love is inherently transformative and something happens in that moment, right? Because God is love. And I really think the greatest of art comes from here, not here. You with me? And so that's why, so I think whenever I'm in the studio, which I think I'm now writing about the studio as sacred space. Because what happens in those moments is the conversation we're having, they're not about the pictures, it's about our lives. It's about God, about our relationships. That's what happens in that studio. It's not about, me taking a good picture. And I think the best pictures come from those relationships. That's why I think the pictures work so well. Because it's love and love. You see what I'm saying to you? So in every moment, I'm getting to know God more. I'm getting to see God. So I'm really struggling theologically on how images, we're creating the image of God, right? The Imago Dei. How our image is a part of that and how we see back and forth, right? And so I'm really struggling with that, but I see that happening in real time. For example, when we do these images, so I have a big screen, set up in my studio, and then we look at the images together. So I'm filming people respond to their own image. And how you respond, when you saw Reiko and Wanda, or you saw Tawana and Bishop, that's how they respond. So what's that about? Right? Something's happening there. But then I'm doing the same thing, like, wow. And I'm doing it as I'm taking the pictures. I'm going like, wow, this is beautiful. You all are amazing. That's perfect. Oh, gosh, what's happening? Something's happening in here, right? And so I honor that. So that's what I think happens, right? Because I really argue that the work you create creates you. And the work comes from love. I think you grow in love and get closer to God by creating the work with those you're co-creating with. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah, so many of those sessions, man, we're crying and laughing and praying and joking and, you know what I mean? You're not coming to take a picture, right? We're coming to be in relationship and we co-create something together. That's what I think happens. And that's what I'm seeking for this to be, right? So that studio to me is like a church. It's like the motorcycle guys. It's like a church. Something happens there, right? Yeah. I'm surprised. Thanks for your question.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here. And this is a different kind of question.
Yes, yes.
But
yes.
since I sit with students in discernment, thinking about how I'd like you to be advisor for a second.
Okay.
You've inspired us so much. We're this community of social justice movers and shakers and artists. If somebody wants to take the next step, would you to be more like you?
Yeah.
You have any shout outs for programs or things to do beyond starting to capture like you talked about last night?
Yeah, good. Thanks for the question. So the reason I give you this PowerPoint is part of the answer is that I give you my process and I give you my the source that have fed me. So first I would say gravitate to those pieces of art that speak to you, number one. Number two, read deeply about the history of that genre you're trying to create. Number three, build relationships. Now, for me, it was an MFA program. I think we should be open to arts-based programs, right? If not in the institution, outside the institution. And the way I learn is I like to go deep. I like to learn it all and then create it. So I really encourage them to think about art-based programs in formal institutions. The second, if you don't want to go that direction, find good workshops in your local area. Could be. I started taking workshops. I was like the photography workshop guy. I went to every workshop that was $500, $2,000, $3,000. I would do all that stuff, right? But that doesn't work for. I need a course of study. But I would argue you may start with workshops, and then wherever you are, there are going to be works in photography, videography, documentary filmmaking. There will be meetup groups there on Instagram, there on Facebook. So find those. And then third, the last thing I would say, YouTube is heaven. You can learn anything on YouTube. I'm serious, and you really can. A lot of stuff I learned in this thing was just YouTube. I would find folk who would give good information. I would subscribe to their channel and watch their videos, because we know that most great teachers on YouTube give it away and then sell you the course, because you still want to be with them face to face, right? I can teach the whole course on YouTube and still charge you $500, and you'll come spend a day with me. So I would say start there. But I would say, first off, just lean into it. Don't fight the urge to create art. It's no special gift. I'm not gifted. I'm trained. Now, the more I train and create, the better I'm becoming at it. But, you know, my photos today are better than my photos were 2 years ago. Not because I'm gifted, because I keep shooting, right? I try to do 10 to 12 photo shoots in my studio a month. And I have lessons learned every shoot that I do, right? That's how this thing grows. So I would say then just start shooting and then finding that community. Does that answer the question? Yes.
We have a question online, but
Sure.
before we do, I do want this audience to know, we have at least 2 students who have MFAs who came here to get either their MTS or their MDiv because they wanted to go deeper spiritually in their creative work, both of whom are poets. And I'm thinking Barbara Fant and Anjanae, what's Anjanae's last name? Dawkins. So, and I think there may be others, but those 2 definitely come to mind.
Good. What's the question?
Aaron's asking, do you have any stories about other cis-het persons who have been transformed by this work?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. Good question. What I have, a person specifically in my family who have engaged the work and talked about the work. I don't want to out those folk by name, but I have many folk who have said to me they have not seen and have not heard, and have seen and heard because of this work. I think it'll be more so even with the book. But I think the most telling night was the night of the opening, where people who came to the opening, who knew me and wanted to see what it was all about, and were actually probably more transformed by the images than the documentary, ironically enough. So yes, I do.
I know a pastor in New Jersey, I'm not going to out him either, it's his to do, who saw the documentary, was also reading Brandon Crowley's book at the same time, and has shifted and changed. Cishet man who pastors a fairly large Baptist church. So.
And the biggest thing, the biggest problem I find churches have, we have to create this resource. How do I move my congregation to where I'm at? A lot of pastors are there.
Which is what Howard John Wesley has done at Alfred Street. Right. And what, which is, I was getting ready to say, which Eugene Gibson, who teaches preaching here, has done at one of the oldest historically Black churches in Columbus, at the historic Mount Olivet Baptist Church. So there are people who are themselves cishet and are slowly shifting churches. It's what Pastor Leslie Callahan did in Philadelphia. Right. Slowly shifted an 135-year-old church to be open and affirming. So much so that that's where Kenyatta, who's the, I can't think of his last name, y'all forgive me, who's married to his partner, they both are members of that church and is on the state, is in the State House of Philadelphia, a representative there. And people come because they know there are, what I'm trying to say is there are cis-het people come because they know their family friends are welcome there. Not because they themselves are queer, but because they know if they ever want to bring their queer family members to a church, they would be safe at that place. That's happening literally all over the country.
And I think we have to, I mean, one of my dreams is to develop a consortium of those churches to come together. Then we can develop resources if other churches want to come along, right? I think we have to really birth that movement in liberal ways. And so we're finishing up the Third Testament now. So I lead a thing at the Columbia Seminary called Thompson Scholars. Every year we bring scholars in. Bishop.
I owe you an essay, I'm sorry.
Bishop Bridgman has been there before. And,
I am not a bishop.
and so I think the next work of Thompson Scholars is going to begin to bring those pastors together to develop those resources for churches to work through these conversations. So I think a lot of them want to make the transition, but we need the resources and the support group to get them through that. So that's kind of my next step with the work as well. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, I have two. You got the mic. You got the mic. Go ahead.
I'm also a creative person, and I have a love-hate relationship with Adobe Creative Cloud. And so I want to know why you love or hate it, and I want to know why you hate it. So
why do I hate what?
Adobe Creative Cloud. Like, how do you? Or what programs do you use to supplement?
Oh, okay. So I do use. So Adobe Creative Cloud is a series of apps we use to create our work. So I do use Lightroom, but I tend to export out of Lightroom. I go to Evoto to edit images. And for my documentary work, I use Final Cut. Right? So I started iMovie, I started the old Final Cut and the new Final Cut. So that's what I do. Then I use Dropbox to store and to share. And then for my photo, I use a program called Sprouts to share those images out. But yeah, so I use Evoto. So Evoto got me out of Lightroom, got me out of Photoshop. Because Evoto is a much faster photo processing program. It's much more affordable than Photoshop was. And Final Cut, the updates are always updating. It's easy to use and it's easy to share and work together across platforms. That's what I use.
You haven't had any problems?
None. I'm free. I'm liberated, right? I use Lightroom very rarely because many times I shoot in Capture One, right? So when I go from Capture One, I export from Capture One into Evoto. So I'm almost bypassing Lightroom, right? Because when I do I tend to call in Capture One, and then I do my initial edits in Capture One. Then I go to Evoto, do my final retouching edits. Export out of Evoto, that's my images come out of. Final Cut, I go right into Final Cut, use the folder system there, like I used to use in the old Adobe and Premiere, and go that way with my edits. Yeah, and it's a money saver too.
There's a question here and another question online.
Sure.
I want to thank you for diagramming that sentence that you just
right.
did. I'm thinking about what you said about your studio being your sacred space.
Right.
And I'm thinking I'm thinking, that's my writing space. I'm like that, and people aren't allowed in, but gods and dogs are.
Right,
God
right,
and dogs
right,
are.
right, right.
And I'm thinking about how intimate that space is and the trust. And so I'm wondering, as we're watching the pictures of people looking at the photos, the images of themselves, as someone who is very uncomfortable having her photo taken, even with my grandchild, and it just makes me sad how I can't be free enough to be photographed with my grandchild. How do you make that trust happen? Is there a transformation? You've talked a lot about the transformation that happens in you. And obviously I can see that there's a transformation that happens in people when they see their own image. But how does that creativity, how does that happen in the studio? I'm specifically thinking, do you touch them? Do you say, move your chin like the school photographer does? Put you in all these positions. What happens there? And I think I got out of the microphone some of the time. I'm really sorry.
No. Gosh, so I didn't do this, so you're convicting me. Because I have done a lot of behind the scenes footage of what happens. So let me tell you what I think happens. So people say, so if you go to my Google reviews, I'm not suggesting you do, but I'm not trying to sell anything. But you'll see what happens in the studio, how people feel comfortable. And I really believe it's my experience as a pastor that happens. See, in the black church, I got to stand there. I preach for an hour and a half, right? I got to stand at the door for the next hour to come out. I got to hug the kids for another hour and a half. So you got to learn how to deal with people, right? And so I really think it's that pastoral approach to image making that makes people comfortable. That makes sense to you, right? But I think too, it's me being interested in them and then creating an atmosphere of fun that lowers the anxiety. Like, for example, the question you get when you come to my studio is, who is your favorite musical artist that you want to listen to when you come to the studio? So let's say you say Doja Cat or whomever. You say whomever. You say Beyonce, whatever it is. So when you come into the studio, guess what's playing? That's how you come to the studio. And I'm rocking. Let's go. So right away, that's how you probably, you feeling whatever your jam is, so we jamming, right? So you come, we jamming. So right there, it lowers the level of anxiety, right? And then we having fun. I'm talking to you the whole time. Girl, oh, look at, oh, I like, oh, that's beautiful. Turn your, oh, look at them. Those eyes are amazing. That's what I'm doing, right? But also, it's real love. Because I know these people. So we've had a consultation. What's your story? What story do you want these images to tell? I'm going to know you you're not going to come to the studio cold. I'm going to know you before you come in. And when you come in, it's welcoming. I got some food there. I got the mirror there. You know, we ready to rock and roll. And I think that's what happens. But I think what we are, so Annie Leibovitz, the great photographer, argues that we get our best pictures when people are natural and comfortable. And that's the goal of the photographer. If I can make you feel comfortable, I'm going to get the image. That's my job. So my goal is not the technical side. That's anybody can do the technical side. It's the relational side. So when you know that I love you and care for you and you feel that, you're going to respond. It's like when folk come to your house. You don't just show up. I'm ready for you. And you feel it. So when you come on campus, I'm down to meet you, to walk you up to the studio. I'm helping you get your clothes out the car. I'm serving you. I'm serving you. I'm a servant. I'm going to carry your clothes to this. I'm going to hang your clothes up in the studio. You see what I'm saying? What snacks do you want? You like M&Ms? You like Nestle's Crunch? I'm going to have your snack there. All that's set up. Because I'm going to love on you, right? I'm going to hug you. I'm going to love you. Then you be lower it down. And then when I get that first great picture, I show you. I turn to you. Oh, girl, we killing this thing. Let's go. Huh? You are beautiful. And you are beautiful, right? Look, you are beautifully and wonderfully made. That's the book. That's the Bible. You are look at the image of God. I'm seeing it. I'm calling it out. And something happens. Oh, look at those eyes. You know, and something happens. But it's real. And I think so people just lower it down. But that music helps, atmosphere helps, right? Because you think about it, y'all. An atmosphere, it sets the stage. Does that make sense to you? So I'm trying to create an atmosphere that's going to make you comfortable, but it's rooted in love. And I think people respond to love. You with me? And that's my goal. Because once you lower that, I'm going to get that smile. Right? Go ahead. Go back.
Yeah, online we actually have a bunch coming in, so I will try to ask them in order as I can see them. How do you suggest the most effective way for average folks to use social media so that we could tell our story as you described yesterday?
Yeah, I think the way you do it is just authentically being yourself without trying to mimic anybody else, and put that camera up and tell your story. I'm amazed at what goes viral, what gets 1,000 views or 2,000 views, and it wasn't well cut or orchestrated or cut on any program. It was simply holding the phone up. So just start telling your story. If you go to my Instagram or Facebook today, you'll see the story I told about, like I told yesterday, I was nervous about preaching. I told that story yesterday, got 1,000 views. I told a story today, this is my last day here, can't wait to get home, right? I just told those stories, that's all you do, right? Just put that camera and start telling those stories, and then the more you tell them, the more comfortable you become with the camera, and in front of the camera, and or creating with the camera. Next question.
How can we apply this same concept to shift how the Black church deals with issues of reproduction and sexuality and the impact of theological teachings that have caused harm to Black women around their reproductive and sexual decisions?
Great question, and a story that I don't know. So how do we begin to tell those stories? I think storytellings are inherently transformative. That's your story to tell, right? So I'm simply saying, tell that story. How do you tell that story? You know, just what you just said, put it in language where everyday folk can understand it. Don't use any big words, just use regular words, right? And just put that camera up and say, you know, the church really needs to deal with. You know, I find the church is struggling with. I wonder why is I couldn't find a church to have conversations about. That's just how you start. And then that's what you post. You with me? Right? So that's all I'm saying to do, right? Because you have a query and a question, a concern. That's not my story. It's your story to tell. So start telling that story. So this is one of my colleagues who've had struggles in this area. This is her story. Click, record, post. Right? That's what you do.
And one more. In the intersection of deconstruction and reconstruction, what can we do about frustration and feelings of having been abandoned? How do we deal with the image of God we were given, and what can we do in this gap to move us forward?
Yeah, so I started yesterday saying we're in an imagination battle. And what happened to me is I was creating this work. I was able to reimagine God. Because the God I was given was not a loving God. The God I was given was not a God that included my LGBT siblings. The God that I was given was a God that's going to send folk to hell for not loving that. It was all kind of messed up stuff. But as I got into a community that saw the God that I believed God was, it helped me see. But it wasn't in creating that work that my imagination of who God was expanded as my imagination was expanded. So what I'm saying is, become part of communities where that expansion and more accurate view of God is displayed and lived out, and it frees you from that other stuff that has messed us up, messes us up, and holds us hostage, right? Because if creativity is inherently freeing, and creating frees, it gets me closer to the Creator. If I'm in communities that do that, I begin to reimagine God. Because I say to my students, theology is what you think about God and what you think God thinks. That's all theology is, what you think about God. So I had to rethink what I think about God, and I had to get in communities that freed me from that. Yes, sir.
So I'm thinking about your work and how inspiring it is to queer folk who have been ostracized by the church and are seeing these portraits of queer folk who are in the church and doing the work in the church. But my studies and what I'm interested in is more of youth and queer young folk. And so I'm thinking about them seeing this work, and yes, it's inspiring to see these older folk who I can look up to, but it would be equally as inspiring, or not more so, to see folk in my age group who are in these portraits, who are, not afraid of being themselves and So I'm wondering, do you have any vision or ideas of expanding that work to a broader age, spectrum for young folk?
Oh, thank you, Jesus. Oh my God. Oh, thank you for that. Thank you. What's your name? Jalen, thank you. That's powerful. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I'm gonna do that. So my wife's a high school principal. So part of our life's work has been committed to children and youth. That's been her whole career, right? So I've been, of course, her husband for 42 years. 42.
44.
Maybe 44. Maybe 44.
44. You've been married 44 years.
44 years. 44, ooh, Jesus. Baby, 44 years, baby. 44 years.
I won't tell Vanessa.
44, what are we? But you know what, though? That's powerful, though, Doc. I'm going to do that. I'm going to make it a part of the Portraits of Faith, this present series, and also the Look of Love, right? So I think that's so important for young folks. I think about that because my book, I talk about in my book, coming up in Edenville, Florida, the homeless or in rehearsal what it meant to be a blue boy. And my pastor sang literally in church in front of all the other boys who weren't blue, right? And he says about me, these are the kind of boys you're raising. What are you saying about George Johnson, my brother? What are you saying? And I say I love George, but I didn't recognize George, right? And so what you're saying to me is that if I can give images of George as a boy, right? How George can see George now and not George here. And we need that, right? So what I'm going to do, so thank you. I'm not giving you a footnote, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand this work. I'm going to expand this work, right? Because we do need kids in this work, because you're right. Because that's what I think about, that middle school, high school. And, Darnell Moore talks about this. Michael Arsenault talks about this, about that period, right? Matter of fact, George Johnson says, Darnell Moore says, I had no one to talk about my relationships with. I remember when I was a kid, my wife and I dated in high school, and she would call the house. Mom would say, who that little girl calling you, right? But Darnell Moore said, I couldn't have that conversation. George Johnson couldn't have that conversation, right? Remember my wife and I getting ready to go to the prom, and we had took all the pictures. They didn't have that conversation. So we do need those images to affirm that, so we can have that. So thank you so much for opening me up to that. I'm going to do it now. I'll give you a footnote. Even though it's good.
I'll make sure you have his name.
Yes.
Yeah, so you talked about creating an experience for somebody when you bring them into your studio.
Right.
And I know yesterday you said you were an executive pastor at a fairly large church.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that those skills are mutually attainable.
Yep.
How do you go about talking about creating a Sunday morning worship experience with people who think that it shouldn't be an experience, but it should be all about spirituality? Can you use that shared language there?
Okay, here we go. So it's common, right? When you go to a restaurant, what do you talk about? It's not the food normally. It's the experience and the food, right? If you get bad service, I don't care how good the food, you ain't going back, right? So I argue anything we do in life that we go back to again and again, it's about we're selling an experience, right? Argue worship is an experience, right? So really what's happening in my study is an experience. So I think you talk about that, talking about other things you've experienced. Like where you go to vacation in the summer, it's about the experience, right? Location. So I think that's just common. But I think we can make how that translates, I think, life of the church as well as other places.
And the reason I'm asking this is when I talk about creating a Sunday morning worship experience with people who have a traditional sense of traditional worship styles, I seem to intend to unintentionally piss off people. And I don't know how to use language that doesn't frustrate.
So ask them about that. Ask them about go to a place and be conscious of the experience. And talk about places you've gone to that you didn't return because of the experience. And then tell them to go visit a church and talk about the experience. Right? Churches that I did not join was because of how the usher street, not how good the preaching was. Right? Or people who didn't move up when you try to get in the pew, they act like you offended them when you're trying to get a seat. You with me? So just have them have those experiences and have those conversations. Make sense? It doesn't make sense. So here's what I'm saying. So have them go to a place or space and reflect about that experience and talking about that. Have them visit another church and talk about that experience. Now can we talk about the experience in our church? Does that make sense to you? Yeah. Right? But have them intentionally reflect upon it and have those conversations. And then what kind of experience do we want to create for those who come in to be a part of this body of faith? That's what I'm arguing as well, right? Right? The next question.
Pass the mic, Danny.
Pass the mic, Danny.
We got it online.
There's a call on, there's a question
yes.
online.
Online. Natasha's asking, how do you advocate for Black women and LGBTQ folks theologically outside of your photography and documentaries?
Interesting. So for me, it's also my writing. It's also my social media. You see it all on my Facebook, my Instagram, my website, and then in my personal relationships and conversations that I'm having, people I'm talking to, how I'm living my life, but primarily through my social media and media I create. My major arm of conversation is through the art that I create, and then I talk about that art specifically in those spaces. Someone else had a question?
Anybody else in the room? Yes.
It's not a question, it's a comment. You know who knows how to do, is this on?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Who knows how to do this really, really well and who the church could learn from is the 20-something drag community. They are amazing at celebrating their stories. It's just on social media with images. I mean, I was just sitting here thinking that.
Yeah.
I've got some friends I should have some really intense conversations
with. And then follow them on Instagram and learn from them how they're doing it, right? I mean, I think it's important to follow folk on Instagram and other social media sites, see how they're doing it successfully. Question right here. I'm sorry, where was that?
Question over there. You have a question?
Mine is not a question, but it's just a comment.
Can you speak up, Tatinda?
Mine is not a question, but it's just a comment. I just want to thank you for inspiring us. I love photography. I take pictures of everything.
Oh, wow.
My friends call me a picture addict, but I just want to thank you for just inspiring us that we should take that creativity and make it something that can tell a story and impact others. And so I just want to thank you so much.
Thank you. You know, I'm saying this about, so the question, I'm piggybacking what you said, and the question was asking me. I'm amazed of who likes and comments on my work and who inboxes me on my work, right? Like, I didn't think this person was even following my work. And they'll say, thank you for your work, yada, 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 right? Which is amazing. Some of the people that you wouldn't think would be following me and having conversation are actually having conversation with me because of the work, because the image stopped them and they inbox me and then we have a conversation. This is my cell phone, hit me up, let's talk about it, right? You know what I'm saying to you? So images do work. So continue to take images, but share your work. You with me? Because if we don't share the work doesn't do the work that it's supposed to do. Make sense?
A lot of thoughts.
Yeah.
Speak up.
It's on.
Okay. All right. So when I saw the image of your church family surrounding you, and you talked about how they love you and you love them. So my mind questions, they love each other too, right? And then it makes me think a lot about, you talk about the future a lot. And yeah, I hear like all of the different things that we need to be talking about in the church, but in some churches we're so far in the past that we're not even ready for those conversations. We're just trying to, what I see you doing is building for the future and preparing for the next generations. And I guess one last thought, and then if you have anything to say on all my thoughts here, I guess. I hear telling stories and had not considered until just a moment ago, like the testimonies of the people in our congregation and how those stories need to be told and how that would build the relationship and love within the congregation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so testimony stories. So, we think, like I said to you, I thought I knew my siblings' stories, and I didn't know. And to know, open up a whole new door and deepness of our relationship and loving and learning. So I do think that's important. I think about this historical church, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong. Bishop Flunder hit me on this and kind of freed me. Bishop Flunder said to me that there needs to be a death in order to be a resurrection. And the church as we know it is going to die. And I was trying to save that church. In that 2-hour interview that was supposed to be an hour, she kind of lectured me. And Ralph, you're wrong. And I believe Bishop Flunder's right. That unfortunately the church that I knew is actually going to die. And I think a new church is being born and we're witnessing it. And I'm trying to chronicle this new birth. But I'm also, I simultaneously and in some ways also chronicling the death of the church as we knew it. And I think the split we've just seen in the UMC, the things we think that I think it's the same with the death of the church. But something new and exciting is being born. I won't live to see it in its full fruition, but Princeton will, my grandson will. I won't see it all. But I do think we're prophesying to the future. And you're right. And thank you for freeing me and you saying that was very helpful. That I think that is what I'm doing, right? But I also want to leave these visual and written legacies that we can see these people. Because it's so hard doing archival work. And you find, like I'm rereading Nell Painter's book on Sojourner Truth. And there's pieces she can't find because the documents aren't available, right? So our next big project too is to do a complete, full-length, multi-part documentary series on the history of the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries. Right, while Bishop Flunder's still alive, she's getting ready to retire, and Mother Miller is getting up there in age to kind of tell that story as well. So that'll be there to tell that story. That'll speak to the future. But yeah, but I do think that Bishop Flunder said this to me too. Churches have a right to die, and we all go through the process, right? We see it now with New Life coming in spring, but had to die in winter. And I think it's where the church is, and we lament that because many of us came from that church, like I did, right? But it's really no more. So I think what I see in the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries, that's the future of the church. Because I don't see God not being, if God's not a God of inclusivity, I don't want that God. That's not my God. That's really not my God. If my God don't love everybody, it's not my God. My God created us all in the image of God, and God loves all of us, right? And I think that's the church. And so I think that's the future of the church, right? And what we saw that happen along racial lines, we're now seeing happen now on these new fault lines. So I do think I'm teasing out what the future is, and I'm trying to see this is it. And I think we'll be proven right 20 to 50 years from now, and I'm okay being wherever I'm going to be at that time, saying, yeah, this is cool. But I also want my grandson and others to come back and see these forerunners. Like we see Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, Du Bois, those others, Aubrey Lord. I want them to be able to see, Bishop Flunder and Bishop Sonia Williams and all those folk too. That's why I'm doing this work too, right? Also to intentionally leave this historical record that we're creating together, that others aren't writing about them. We're doing these things together, right? You see what I'm saying to you? Like the Third Testament is a vision from Bishop Flunder, writing back to the text, actually taking authority to create a third text, right? And Dr. Pamela Lotze, Bishop Flunder, and myself, primarily Dr. Lotze and Bishop Flunder, are editing the text. I'm kind of the secretary of the team, but to leave that record, right? So we're doing that now.
I promise you're going to get my essay.
Right, and Dr. Richard's going to be in that book because she's going to write on preaching, we hope. But that's the goal of that book too, right? But to leave those records that we're creating, other folk creating about us, right? But I do think you're right. So thank you for letting me know what I'm doing. I'm serious because some might like, what am I doing? Because I do feel like the church ain't hearing me, but I'm not really writing to them anyway. You know what I mean? I'm really writing to the future. I'm writing to Princeton. Then I might go, oh, this is what Papa was talking about. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah.
As we come to a close, I want to say a couple of things, and you and I can have a quick dialogue. We got 5 minutes.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the things that I have been with Bishop Flunder since 1992. That's how long I have been with the City of Refuge, and then was there when the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries was being birthed, all of that. And so I feel deep affinity for obvious reasons for this work, because I know most of the people that you're taking, doing the documentary with, and was with Ella when, what's her name? When she was following us around to get the book that you did.
Oh, Ella Lewis. Yeah,
Lewis.
Ella Lewis.
That,
oh, wow.
yeah, and the thing that I am struck by that I want you to say something about is that at the Fellowship of Affirming Ministry, for those of you who don't know, people come from all traditions, all Christian traditions and some non-Christian traditions to the Fellowship of Affirming Ministry. So, but the core of the fellowship is Pentecostal, right? They sing a lot of old church songs. And so people often think they're birthing a new church. They sing old hymns and old church songs. Why do you think that is?
I think because of the traditions we come out of, I think we're historically connected. And while God is doing a new thing, that new thing does not exegete the old thing. I think it connects the old thing. So I think this rootedness that we have, it comes with us. We're not disconnected from the past. We're bringing the past into the future. Because it's interesting, I hear those songs differently in that space.
Exactly.
Right? It's like when I'm at a seminary singing church stuff that I sing in church, it's different than being in my church. It's like it's a performance. When I'm at a church, it's a different vibe. It's like eating at a restaurant versus eating at home. You know what I'm saying to you? So I think it's something about that home cooking that still occurs there. And I think the songs have a different meaning in the T-Fam meeting than they had in my more traditional settings.
Yeah, I remember when I was installed here and we sang Hold to God's Unchanging Hand. There were about 200 people in this room. Plus the ancestors, you could feel them in the room. And you could see, excuse my language, white people looking around going, oh my God, what in the world is going on? Like, weren't you here, Willis? I can't remember. Like they were scared because they were like, oh my God. And Renita Williams got up and said, I know you ain't never had this many black folk in this room. And she wasn't just talking about the people in the pews. Right. So I think you're right. I say that because I'm always worried when people think new church means that the thing that helped bring our ancestors over isn't at all important to us anymore. And I think you're right that it's the tradition. Would you say, kind of as a thank you for agreeing to do Jalen's project? Because I actually think
that's good.
I think both at the Proctor Institute of Children's Advocacy, a lot of queer kids, a lot of queer kids, and at the fellowship, a lot of queer kids.
You're right.
So you actually have at your fingerprint, you know, some students already who can then introduce you to other people. I'm saying students, but I mean children who. But I wonder, as your imagination gets fired more and more, who are you passing it on to? Who are you mentoring to become like you?
Wow, interesting. Jalen.
Jalen is a fashion icon. He's a fashionista.
So I think what happens is, you know, because I've been in the academy my life, and so a lot of my work has been, of course, working more with, I work a lot with doctoral students. So I see myself more in that realm. Now, what we're beginning to do with this company that I'm developing, we're going to develop a series of courses, much like the workshop idea, people can take on to. But what I do, and what I say to people, my studio is an open book in Atlanta. We just opened a studio recently on campus to come in. So we're going to start having interns from Savannah College of Art and Design, BFA students, MFA students actually come and work with us in the studio to create work, right? But it's primarily with students, right? Students who want to do artsy stuff tend to gravitate to me. I'm doing a lot of mentoring of PhD students who are doing art-based research around the world who institution does not support that work. And so I'm doing that work. So I do a lot of that type of work. But I want to be more intense specifically about Jalen's idea of not only capturing those students, but helping develop them into their own creative selves if they have that bent, right? Because really I want students who are actually LGBTQ plus to be doing this work along with me, right? Which will give the work a different look, a different slant too, right? That's the goal. So yeah.
Y'all help me thank again.
Thank you.
Dr. Watkins for this.
Thank you, Jalen.
I want to say when we say generative work, this is what we mean by generative work at MTSO. Thank you again, Dr. Watkins. Go in peace, y'all. Go up the hill and eat if you haven't done that, and see you later.